My name is Tara, and I learned the hard way that tears can be just another currency in the wrong hands. I thought I knew who Jess was. We met 3 years ago during senior year of college, two strangers paired together by the housing lottery. We weren't instant best friends, but we got along well enough to decide to continue living together after graduation. She was fun, social, always planning weekend trips or nights out, while I was more practical, focused on building my career and saving money. Different, but complementary, or so I thought. The first time Jess asked for an extension on rent, I didn't think twice about it. We'd been living in our downtown apartment for about 4 months post-graduation. It was a cute 2-bedroom on the 3rd floor of an old building, nothing fancy, but in a great location, walking distance to restaurants and the small tech company where I'd landed my first real job. "Tara, I hate to ask this," she said one evening 3 days before rent was due, "but is there any way I could give you my half of the rent next week? My paycheck is delayed and I'm a little short." I remember looking up from my laptop, seeing her standing in the doorway of my bedroom, fidgeting with the sleeve of her sweater. She looked genuinely uncomfortable, asking. "Of course," I said, "no problem. Just pay me back when you can." She thanked me profusely, promising to have the money by the following week. And she did. 7 days later, she Venmo'd me her portion plus a little extra for being so understanding. I barely thought about it again. The second time happened about 2 months later. This time she said her car needed unexpected repairs. The third time, it was a medical bill she hadn't anticipated. Each time I covered her portion, and each time she eventually paid me back, always with sincere gratitude and usually a small gift, like my favorite coffee or a bottle of wine. By the 6th month of this pattern, I was starting to feel uneasy. It wasn't that she never paid me back, it was the increasing frequency of these emergencies. Every month brought a new crisis, a new reason why she couldn't make rent on time. Still, she was my friend, and I wanted to believe her. I told myself everyone goes through rough patches. Besides, she always seemed so genuinely distressed when asking, her eyes often welling up with tears as she detailed whatever new disaster had befallen her finances that month. But then I started noticing other things. Despite being perpetually broke when it came to rent, Jess never seemed to lack money for social activities. There were new clothes appearing in her closet, weekend trips with her other friends, expensive dinners where she posted elaborate cocktails on her Instagram story. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe those clothes were from discount stores. Maybe her friends paid for those trips. Maybe those cocktails were happy hour specials. I didn't want to be judgmental. After all, everyone deserves small pleasures, even when struggling financially, right? Then came the breaking point. Last month. Rent was due on the 1st, as always. 3 days before, Jess approached me in the kitchen as I was making dinner. "Tara," she began, her voice already trembling slightly, "I need to talk to you about something." I turned down the heat under my pasta sauce, already knowing what was coming. "Let me guess. Rent?" She nodded, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm so behind on bills this month. My hours got cut at work and then my mom needed help with some medical expenses." A tear slid down her cheek. "I've never been this behind before. I don't know what to do." Despite my growing skepticism, the sight of her crying still pulled at my heart. "How much time do you need?" I asked, keeping my voice gentle. "Just a few extra days," she promised, wiping her eyes. "A week at most. I'm expecting money from my second job soon." Second job? This was news to me. Jess had never mentioned taking on additional work, but it made sense if she was struggling as much as she claimed. "Okay," I agreed. "I can cover you again. Just make sure you pay me back as soon as you can." "You're a lifesaver," she said, pulling me into a tight hug. "I promise I'll make it up to you." I nodded, returning to my sauce before it burned. Something felt different this time. Her performance, because that's what it was starting to feel like, seemed more dramatic than usual. The tears came faster, the story more elaborate. But I pushed my doubts aside and transferred the full rent amount to our landlord that evening. 2 hours later, everything changed. I was scrolling through Instagram before bed, mindlessly liking photos of friends' pets and vacation scenery. Then Jess's latest post appeared on my feed. It was a mirror selfie taken in her bedroom, the same bedroom in the apartment I had just paid for in full. She was dressed for a night out, wearing a new outfit I hadn't seen before, but what caught my eye was the handbag casually displayed in the foreground of the photo, a distinctive designer purse with a pattern I recognized instantly from advertisements. A handbag that, if authentic, cost well over $2,000, more than our entire month's rent. The caption read, "Treating myself because I deserve it, self-care, new edition, fashion investment." I stared at the picture, my mind racing to make sense of it. Maybe it was a knockoff, maybe it was borrowed from a friend, maybe she'd been saving for months to buy it. But then I noticed the shopping bag in the corner of the photo, from the designer's actual store, and the receipt partially visible on her dresser. This wasn't a knockoff or a loan. This was a brand new designer bag purchased the same day she had cried to me about being so behind on bills. Something cold settled in my chest as the realization sank in. I had been played, for months, probably, all those tears, all those desperate stories about unexpected expenses and delayed paychecks, while she was spending money on luxury items that most people with stable finances would think twice about buying. My first impulse was to storm into her room and confront her, to demand an explanation for how someone who couldn't afford her share of rent could somehow afford a bag that cost more than most people's monthly salary. But I held back. Confronting her while angry would only lead to denials, more tears, elaborate explanations. I needed to be strategic about this. So instead, I took a screenshot of her post. I then opened our text thread and typed out a simple message. "Rent's due by midnight," or "the locks change by morning." I attached the screenshot of her Instagram post and hit send. 3 little dots appeared immediately. She was typing, then stopping, typing again. 5 minutes passed with those dots appearing and disappearing. Finally, a response came through. "It's not what it looks like. Can we talk about this?" I didn't reply. I set my phone down, turned off my light, and tried to sleep. My mind was too active with realizations, connecting dots from months of inconsistencies and half-truths. Remembering all the times I had worried about my own budget while covering her portion, cutting back on my own small luxuries to ensure our rent was paid in full and on time. My phone pinged again, and again. I ignored it. Morning came and Jess was waiting for me in the kitchen. Her eyes were red and puffy as if she'd been crying all night. The designer bag was nowhere to be seen. "Tara, please let me explain," she started as soon as I entered. I poured myself a cup of coffee, not speaking yet. "The bag is a gift," she said quickly, "from my mom. I didn't buy it." I took a slow sip of my coffee, studying her face. "Your mom who needed help with medical expenses? That mom?" She faltered. "Well, yes, but that was before. She came into some money and wanted to do something nice for me." "So your mom, who was supposedly in financial distress, suddenly had over $2,000 to spend on a luxury handbag for you, while you still can't afford rent?" Jess's eyes filled with tears again, right on cue. "You're making it sound awful. It wasn't like that." "Then what was it like, Jess? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me for months." "I haven't been lying," she insisted, tears now streaming down her face. "Things have been really tough for me financially, but the bag was a special circumstance." I set my coffee down. "Let me see the receipt." "What?" "The receipt for the bag. It was on your dresser in the photo. If your mom bought it as a gift, her name would be on the receipt, right?" She hesitated. "I put it away somewhere." "Then go get it." "I don't have to prove anything to you," she said, her tone shifting from tearful to defensive. "You're supposed to be my friend, not my accountant." "Friends don't lie to each other about money, Jess. Friends don't cry poverty while buying luxury items." She crossed her arms. "So I treated myself one time. Is that such a crime? Do you monitor everything I buy?" "No, but when you tell me you can't afford rent, then spend more than our rent on a handbag the same day, it makes me question everything else you've told me." "You're being ridiculous. It's my money. I can spend it how I want." And there it was. No more tears. No more excuses about delayed paychecks or family emergencies. Just the truth, finally. She had the money all along. "You're right," I said calmly. "It is your money." And our rent is your responsibility, which is why your half is due by midnight tonight, as I said in my text. Or what? She challenged. You can't change the locks. My name is on the lease too. True, I acknowledged, but I can talk to the landlord about your consistent late payments. I can stop covering for you. I can make sure everyone knows exactly who you are and what you've been doing. Her face hardened. You wouldn't. Try me. I picked up my coffee again. Midnight, Jess. Not a minute later. I left the apartment then, heading to work, leaving her standing in our kitchen. Throughout the day, my phone buzzed with texts from her, ranging from apologetic to angry, from explanations to accusations that I was being controlling and unreasonable. I ignored them all. At 11:58 p.m., I received a Venmo notification. Jess had transferred her half of the rent, plus a small amount extra, no note attached. When I got home that evening, her bedroom door was closed. I could hear her moving around inside, but she didn't come out. We didn't speak for 3 days. When we finally did cross paths in the common area, she acted as if nothing had happened. No mention of the handbag, the rent, or our confrontation. But things had changed irrevocably between us. The trust was gone. I started noticing more inconsistencies in stories she'd told me over the years. Small lies that seemed inconsequential at the time now appeared as part of a larger pattern of manipulation. After a week of increasingly tense silence, I decided I couldn't live like this anymore. I sat down and calculated exactly how much money Jess had borrowed from me over the past year, beyond her regular rent payments, and how much she had actually paid back. There was a shortfall of nearly $1,500, not including the emotional cost of constant stress and worry. I drafted a payment plan and left it on the kitchen counter with a note. This is what you still owe me. I expect monthly payments until it's cleared. Also, I won't be renewing our lease when it ends in 2 months. You should start looking for a new place to live. The next morning, the paper was gone. Later that day, I received a Venmo payment for the full amount owed with a note that simply read, "We're even." So she had the money all along. Every tearful request for an extension, every story about financial hardship, every promise that she was just going through a temporary rough patch, all of it was a lie. That night, I heard her on the phone in her room, her voice carrying through our thin walls. Yeah, I need to find a new place. No, it's not working out with Tara anymore. She's being totally unreasonable about money. So, controlling. Yeah, I think I need a roommate who's more laid back. I almost laughed. Laid back. What she really meant was someone new to manipulate, someone who wouldn't notice or care that she prioritized luxury purchases over financial responsibilities. Someone who would believe the tears and the stories and the promises to do better next time. The next 2 months were a strange dance of avoidance and practicality. We communicated only when absolutely necessary, about bills and apartment maintenance. She found a new place quickly, a larger apartment in a trendy neighborhood that cost considerably more than our current one. I didn't ask how she could afford it. On moving day, we exchanged stilted goodbyes. No hugs, no promises to stay in touch, just a formal acknowledgement that this chapter was closing. I hope you know I valued our friendship, she said as she carried her last box out. Things just got complicated. I nodded but didn't respond. What was there to say? That I had valued our friendship too, but discovered it was built on lies? That I felt foolish for being so easily manipulated by a few well-timed tears? After she left, I walked through the half-empty apartment, feeling both relief and sadness. 3 years of living together, of building what I thought was a friendship, ended not with a bang, but with a designer handbag and the slow recognition that I had never really known her at all. I learned some valuable lessons from my experience with Jess, about setting boundaries, about trusting my instincts when something feels off, about the difference between helping a friend in genuine need and enabling someone who sees generosity as something to exploit. Most importantly, I learned that true friendship isn't tested by how much you're willing to give, but by how honestly you're able to receive. Jess took and took, hiding behind tears and stories, never offering transparency or genuine gratitude. That's not friendship. That's manipulation. A month after Jess moved out, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. Hi, is this Tara? I'm Meg, Jess's new roommate. I hope this isn't weird, but did she by any chance have issues paying rent on time when she lived with you? I stared at the message, recognizing the beginning of a pattern I knew all too well. Poor Meg was only a month in and already experiencing what had taken me years to fully understand. I thought carefully about my response. Part of me wanted to warn her, to lay out every detail of Jess's manipulative behavior, but another part knew that wouldn't help. Meg would either see through Jess eventually, as I had, or she wouldn't. Yes, she did, I replied simply. Trust your instincts and document everything. Meg responded with a simple thank you. I never heard from her again, but I sometimes wonder how long it took before she too saw through the tears to the truth beneath. How many rent cycles, how many emergencies, how many promises, before the pattern became clear. As for me, I found a smaller apartment that I could afford on my own. No more covering for anyone, no more wondering if I was being kind or just being played. The peace of mind is worth every penny of living alone. Some people might think I was harsh with Jess, that I should have been more understanding or given her more chances. But I had already given her dozens of chances, months of belief in stories that never quite added up. I don't regret setting that final boundary, I don't regret demanding what was rightfully owed to me, and I certainly don't regret walking away from a friendship that existed only when it benefited her. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do for yourself is to recognize when someone sees you not as a friend but as a resource to be exploited. And sometimes the clearest message you can send is the simplest one. Rent's due by midnight, or the locks change by morning. Because some lessons need to be stated plainly without tears or manipulation or room for negotiation. Some boundaries need to be drawn in permanent ink, not pencil. I still see Jess on social media occasionally. Her life looks perfect in the carefully curated squares of Instagram: designer clothes, exotic vacations, expensive restaurants. I often wonder how she affords it all, or if her new roommates and friends are covering her portion while she spends lavishly on herself. But that's not my problem anymore. I've learned my lesson, paid my tuition in the school of manipulation, and graduated with a degree in setting boundaries. And that, as they say, is priceless.